Underground Comics meets horror with Fantagor. Hey comic freaks, and welcome back to Dangerous Comics. I'm your host, Dane Georges, and today we're looking at Fantagor number 3 by Richard Corben. Now, Fantagor was an anthology by Richard Corben that he started in 1970. We can look at this first issue here because he has a really nice introduction to the series in the editorial. The first 2 issues of Fantagor were in black and white except for the covers. So issue 3 that we're looking at is the first issue that was in full color. And so looking at the editorial, we have Welcome to Fantagor. Within these pages lies the realm of fantasy, horror, science fiction, and adventure. Fantagor is dedicated to the telling of stories in this genre through the medium of the picture story. Fantagor, like most fanzines, is a hobby. It's an odd mixture of my favorite things, but as a hobby, it's very expensive, nearly too expensive to become a reality. There are a lot of stories I'd like to tell and a lot of things I want to do in Fantagor. Future issues will have more artists, more writers, and more pages. Every issue of Fantagor will have a color cover. However, the printer told me he didn't care about the great plans I had, nor about the Fantagor's unlimited future. He said he wanted some money for his paper, ink, and time, so the future of this fanzine depends upon its acceptance by the fans and upon their acceptance of their posters. I sincerely thank everyone who has bought our posters. The money from those sales has enabled us to have this, our first issue printed. Copyright 1970, Richard Corben. It's interesting that they were supplementing the sales of these issues with the sale of the posters. We see a few of the posters advertised here in the back, but I'm sure, although these are in black and white, I'm sure they're in the full Richard Corben glory. Look at all those textures and everything. But what's really nice about these first couple issues is that you get this really nice look at Richard Corben's inks. Cool stories in here. This is the backup that's done by Herb Arnold and Star Armitage. There's some really cool drawings in even this first issue of the map. It's just cool to see Richard Corben kind of doing a little bit of everything. And like that first story that we were looking at was kind of more of like his open line art, but we're also seeing his more airbrush kind of style. Really great character work. There's some great horror in these compositions and just the action that he's doing frame by frame, ending on some great shadow, great things in silhouette as this guy's tied up. Issue 2 did go on to be quite a bit longer. So our horror host is Fantagor and Ook. And Fantagor is this second head growing off of this lifeless body, and he kind of speaks for Ook, who is basically just makes that expression the whole time. The second issue, more artists, some different kind of stories, but cool to see how he's expanding the line. We do have a little bit of color in here. There is a Richard Corben color story here. And wow, just beautiful, beautiful colors on this. There's some really great color use with these blues and greens climbing up the wall. Yeah, really dynamic storytelling. And you can tell that he's excited to play with color, so it's really fun to see that they're going to do issue 3, which is all color. Richard Corben gets to kind of stretch in another way and show just like what he knows about the printing process, because that's what makes this comic so good, is just how he's able to manipulate the colors and just like print comics that are unlike anything else. Like, this does not look like your typical comic. These colors, it feels like he's tapping into a collection of colors that just like everyone else in the industry decided, oh, we're not going to use those, but Richard Corben is able to make them pop, and just the contrast of them. There's some darkness in there, but the way he's able to layer up to light, really impressive. And so we've got this front cover is by Richard Corben. Back cover is a collaboration between Richard Corben and Von Baudet. So really cool to see them working together. You can really see Von Baudet's like character design there and like the proportions he would use. And I love how we're framing it with these darker elements so that feels even brighter. And for the main cover, just Richard Corben's monster design here. This is based on another story inside there that we'll get to by Herb Arnold. And so cool to see him adapting another person's character and just like the horror of this image of this monster just crouched over, devouring some human. We see there's like a foot. This is actually published by Last Gasp. This was originally self-published by Richard Corben, but this would be a printing that came later down the line that was reprinted by Last Gasp. Last Gasp is a San Francisco-based book publisher, and it's owned and operated by Roy Turner. Also went on to publish or republish Robert Crumb comics like Zap Comics. So they really were a big proponent for underground comics and getting them in a bit of a wider distribution. And this would have gone to head shops and some select comic shops. Wouldn't really get distribution alongside like your typical Marvel or DC comics. And Richard Corben's art is just unmatched. We got to see what this book was looking like in black and white, and now to see it in color is really cool to see how he's approaching it in a different way. You know, this is not the typical approach for colors. I like how we're really leaving panels open, letting the color kind of inform foreground, background. But we've got a new look at Fantagor and Ook in color. We see how that head is just kind of dying off, but they're even exclaiming, "Hi there, this is Fantagor and Ook, back already, in color." They're fishing for these like worms, and they've got a hand on the fishing line. But just really unique color choices of this orange and purple. And it's so fluorescent. It's like, it feels like it's a blacklight comic. The first story in here is The Temple, which is kind of a play on like an Adam and Eve story of them finding knowledge. And they're going through this garden and they run into the snake. And he's kind of telling them to go to this castle where they can learn about knowledge. So it just shows how stupid you are. If you went to that temple, you could be smart. The people feel 3D in the way that he's rendering and coloring things. Because they come to this temple of knowledge, awesome details just in this background, setting some depth of yellow in the orange for the sky. This is wild, like getting this like early gradient in here. But he wouldn't be doing that with like Photoshop. It's like how he's like laying up layers and like color overlays. But they get to the temple and they get in trouble with their mother in heaven. "I should have known you'd turn on me. Well, I'll turn you into..." And then she transforms them into muskrats. And then the snake is able to come back and he got a built-in dinner. So I think that was his plan all along. Next story up is Herb Arnold again, but this time we get to see his work in color. And this is about a musician that has a dark secret and a way to become famous. He's leaving, he's a musician, he's not being respected here by these people. Look at that dramatic pose, I love it. Just standing amongst these guys, just striking a pose. "Then I must be a puppet to the whims of the people. Never! I will not sacrifice art for some rich music lover's evening entertainment." And he goes off. He's going to make art for art and not bow to these people. Look at this. This background is so cool of that city. Just how those colors overlay over each other. That little bit of overlay just gets a little bit of like a bright light shining on top of the peaks of the mountains into this awesome, awesome panel. He has this moment of almost madness as he's traveling. His coach and buggy breaks down. He ends up having to walk, going through the cold, not really suited for it, and he ends up waking up in a church setting where this father has saved him. And as he's learning about where he is and who has taken him in, he is told about this secret tavern or this place that people don't really go to. It's a tomb, sealed, not to be opened. And of course, this dude is like, "Oh, I'll go on in." Goes, and there's of course an organ down there. And this guy is a pianist. He studied music, so this is perfect for him. He goes in there, says it's some type of music book in Latin. "I'll play this first piece." And he plays some. And all of a sudden, this monster starts to form from the top of the organ, from the music. And it's a great beast. And he's swiping at him, and he realizes, he looks down, and he sees, oh, there's more music here. And if he continues to play it, he's able to control the beast. And so he was talking about not being a puppet for those people, but now he's created his own puppet that he can control with this organ. And he uses it to get fame and riches. And he sends it out to get money. Of course, it's killing people too. And there's some crazy colors over here too. There's just like a green overlaid over this entire panel, like printed last over everything. It kind of like hides the demon back there, but it's kind of cool how much he's in the shadow. Just interesting, they also colored the narration block. But you know, our musician, he's kind of becoming like this like evil dude. So now he kills the father that helped bring him back to health because he's getting in his way. So this is like the first death that he's committed on his own without the demon. But he hides the body away. So as he's playing, he brings the monster back. It's the music. It's stopping. If he can't play the organ, that's when he loses control over the beast. And he loses control of it because the father's blood is seeping down through the cracks and clogging up the organ so he can't play. And so now the beast is loose upon him. And we go to Kittens for Christian. And this is co-written by J.S. Stronad and Richard Corben. This is a pretty dark tale about an apocalypse setting where these two boys are out hunting for food based on what their captain is requesting, and tonight he wants kittens for dinner. Or I guess at least cats. But what they end up finding are a bunch of kittens. And our main protagonist is definitely not into this choice, but he's kind of the smallest guy. He can't really speak up for himself, but he is kind of amongst this band of dangerous guys that are kind of like going around and taking what they want. I mean, it's what society has become, but we get a cool look at this broken down world with still having some advertisements that are up. And I like how they use that printing there to kind of separate that from the grungy real world to the clean fake world of advertisement, and also mirroring like the innocence of that with the innocence of the cats also being white together. But the mama cat attacks and tries to protect her kittens, and sadly the mother cat doesn't win. This guy goes crazy and smashes the cat. It's pretty gruesome, and pretty gruesome results are left on his face as the cat has scratched him all up. But really crazy coloring on here too, the kind of detail that Richard Corben's putting in there, using the halftone to kind of cut away to do skin highlight on there. And we cut and we get some more cool looks at this like dusk desert as these gigantic bugs. It's like all of the animals in this apocalyptic setting have gotten bigger and bigger while humans are kind of becoming like the little rodents. They're getting chased out. Kind of telling our story of how these two joined the gang, and now they're going back with their prize. He's got this little box full of kittens. But before they get back home, they hit another problem as a gigantic rat jumps out. Luckily, Simon is able to impale this rat. Our protagonist is hoping that in the scuffle, these cats were going to be able to escape because he dropped the box. He says, but they didn't, and he grabs them back up. And when they get back to their boss, really cool shift of scene where we introduce green now into the palette. Great like hatching here for the trees. I like how we've gone from like the rubble, which is like all this like splotchy black ink, to try to show that grunge and dirt. And then when we get to nature, has that more elegant like swipe of the brush here to kind of indicate leaves without having to get in there and do like every individual dot or anything. And then how it fades away is really nice. So as they're going in, we get their other gang members seeing them, and we just get a little taste of how cruel their leader is as he knocks around one of their other minion guys. Still using that yellow as an amazing highlight and really drawing your attention to these two characters that have entered. They're trying to show off what they got for their boss, and it's some kittens, and he is pleased. They show it off, and then they turn and they say, hey, Christian, who is our protagonist, they say, wasn't it your night to cook? Because I know he's kind of against all this. And so they're saying, you're going to have to cook these kittens. And he's freaking out because, like, honestly, who wouldn't? He says, I just wouldn't be able to do it. And he turns and he just runs with the cats as fast as he can. That little bastard, I'll get him. And wow, I love just that switch then too, as we're all almost like all red except for our pops of that yellow of Christian as he's trying to get away in this like hell. But they wrestle, he fights these guys, he's able to kick their leader right in the balls, and he steals his gun from him, and there's this crazy, ominous look as he takes the gun, and he's trying to hold his ground, trying to show them down. And a really cool technique is used here on the face to kind of go into the shadow. Very, very ominous, very cool, and really stands out on this page. But, you know, the kid stood his ground, and they're going to let him go, and he leaves. He leaves with the cat and the gun, and they're like, oh, he's not going to last very long. And then, wow, what a cool shift here as we go to these blues. Oh, looks so, so good. And then that little bit of brightness down there as he's heading toward the civilization. But now we get a jump ahead in time, and we see Christian here all grown up, and the cats have grown up with him, and they're huge now. You can see they're these gigantic house cats, but they're like as big as lions or tigers. And now they're going to go back and show that gang what's up. Really cool setup here. Like, that's like such a cool start to like a comic series, and just throwing it in here. It's so fun. You can really imagine where the stories could go with this kind of hero. Kind of feels like a Commandy, Jack Kirby kind of setup as well, but so cool to see that through like the Richard Corben lens. And we end on The Demon Gate by Dresser. The story starts with this wizard bringing 4 people together, and so there needs to be 5 of them total, but these people all have this ancient connection to this door, this demon gate that is in this mountain. And the connection is that they all had grandparents that helped this wizard lock away the demons. 100 years ago, the demons overran our countryside, and as wizards I did my best to destroy them, but they kept coming from their world through this opening. Since my powers alone could not stop them, I chose 4 of the most courageous. Then I conjured this magical gate after we all drove them back into their world. But my magic has its limits, and so every 100 years the gate will open. For one day, while gathering strength to remain shut for another century. Those 100 years are almost up, and the demon gate starts to wake up. And such a cool effect here. We've seen the gate a few times as it's just kind of like open jaw. And then all of a sudden here, it's like it's going into like a yawn. Like the jaw is lowering, and then all of a sudden the little arms begin to raise as the gate awakens. They're able to go inside, and they see in the distance of the cave a horde of demons approaching. And one of these guys that was summoned is feeling a little shaky, not really sure he wants to do this. Wait, I hear hooves. He says, the demons. Cool sequence. Really interesting colors here too, how it's almost like you're not like supposed to see very much. It's in the darkness of them fighting, all just like this green, dark green color with the red blood highlights being the only thing you can really see. They said, the demons are retreating. We have won. They are gone. We have succeeded. The gate is going to trap us. Let me out. If you leave without us, the gate will close. And this guy runs out before anyone else. And this lettering technique is really interesting, how they've layered it to kind of look like it's happening in time or in succession or almost over each other. As it's closing, we're trapped, coward, traitor. And this guy leaves them. And now the gate's face has changed and shows all of the sacrificed friends of his along with the demon face. And he just kind of cowers. So sacrificed all of his friends because he couldn't just wait for them. And we end with Fantagor here. He's given this flower to this beautiful woman, and it ends up kind of attacking her and kissing her. It's really fun to look at this, starting with the black and white and kind of where Richard Corben started, and then how he could really like level his art up and really flex his muscles and show off what he knew about the color process and printing process. And I think looking at this kind of art, looking at Richard Corben comics, it really always makes you question and look a little bit harder and like just wonder, how'd you make that line? And I love reading books like that and seeing art like that just makes you want to like learn more, and it makes you investigative. But this has been Fantagor number 3 by Richard Corben. But they're doing a lot of really great restoration prints of his work. Dark Horse has an amazing Den collection out there, and that's being like beautifully recolored and remastered by Jose Villarrubia. So check that out. There's plenty of Richard Corben books out there. Thank you so much for watching. And if you are a comic freak just like me, why not check out some of my comics as well? Because I'm a self-published cartoonist, and you can find all my work at danegeorges.com. Doomskull, which is a series about an ex-supervillain that works at a grocery store with his minion Bag Boy. And I have 3 issues of that on the website with a 4th issue on the way. You can also find some horror zines that I do, like Sleepless Sights, which is a guy going on a dreamlike adventure through his apartment complex. We have The Passenger, which is about picking up a hitchhiker, and of course that can't go well. And then we've got Jiggly-Bub, which is about a piece of gum that God spits out and lands on Earth. Last but not least, you can check out X-Ray, which is a collection of my 4-panel comics, which I would post on Instagram, Webtoons, and Tapastic, and all other social media platforms. You can find all this and more at danegeorges.com, which will be linked in the description below. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate you hitting that like button and subscribing, because I post an episode every week, so you're sure to find something that you like. But until next week, remember to think and read dangerously.